Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Ask Dave. A viewer writes, well, in so many words, I've been meaning to ask you this for a long time. If you had the opportunity to run a classical record label, what would you do? What artists would you hire? How would you organize yourself? All of those questions. And well, I suppose it's only fair to ask that question because I spend so much time criticizing other classical record labels, and I would have to put my money where my mouth is. Of course, there are quite a few that I admire tremendously as well. So, and also the viewer stipulated leaving out financial considerations, which makes sense, actually, because none of this is real, number one, and number two, financial considerations govern everything. So, if you said you don't need to be profitable, oh, well, thank you. If I don't need to be profitable, I'm going to assume I want to be profitable. But here are the things that I would like to do and where I get the ideas from, because I'm not an original genius when it comes to this. There are certain labels that I admire tremendously, people I admire tremendously, that were incredibly successful in their day and which could be successful again. I can't speak to the current structure of classical music consumption and delivery, the question of physical product versus streaming and downloads and all of that stuff. That's a whole nother study. I'm talking about how to build a label that has a presence, that has a vision. And this would be my vision. First of all, first and foremost, my model would be Mercury Living Presence, as evidenced by Wilma Cozart-Fine, with whom I discussed this issue at length. And her philosophy is so smart and so simple. Her philosophy was build a catalog, have a vision for your catalog, and structure everything around that. And I believe that. I believe that to the innermost fiber of my being, because what she managed to do, she and her husband managed to do, was to create a body of work which has survived everything up to the present day without having to have the most famous artists. The most famous artists were all signed to the big labels, and they were a smaller label. They were an upstart. But they created an enduring legacy because of the way that they structured their catalog. And that is why those recordings endure. I mean, it really is. And you can't ask for more than that. So, what would the catalog contain? First, you have to figure out who your artists are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, what is available and what is missing from the current catalog, which today is a very difficult question because everything's out there. Everything is out there. But the difference is that Mercury Living Presence had a sonic image, and they believed and supported their catalog. It wasn't stuff that appeared and then all went out of print. Well, the whole catalog, the whole label disappeared for a while because it was sold and stuff happened. But essentially, while they were going strong, and when they started to get reissued, Wilma decided very, 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 very definitively that she was going to stick with the catalog image, and she was not going to give preference to one thing over another. What were the areas that Mercury Living Presence had? Well, they had band music with Frederick Fennell, right? They had and the Eastman Wind Ensemble. They had interesting American music with Howard Hanson and his stuff. They had standard repertoire, granted, with Antal Dorati and other artists who were well known but not the most known. They had a slight lean towards contemporary music in the sense of Stravinsky and people like that by conductors like Dorati, who are really, really good at it, and Skrovatchevsky and those folks. They went and got Paul Paré to do the French repertoire. They found people who could be said to specialize distinctively in different repertoire niches. And then they underwent extensive recording programs with them to give them time to amass a catalog. And then they stuck with their catalog. And here, another example of how to do that is BIS, which deletes nothing, which keeps everything available. Because, you have to be sensible about this. The classical music recording industry does not have the kind of money to do crazy promotion and advertising. It never has. It never has. I mean, the major labels for brief periods of time did, and with specific projects or with specific artists. But by and large, when you're trying to sell a catalog, what matters is staying power over time. So we have to find out what is missing in the market, what gaps we can fill, what artists are available to best fill them. They don't have to have the biggest name recognition. They have to have some. They have to be mature in that sense, in the sense that they have a bit of an ongoing reputation and a reputation in performance that can help promote the recordings. And then you need to decide what your catalog is going to contain. So that's the vision for the label. And it's really the most important thing. I don't know, because no one's asked me the question before now, really, what my catalog would be at this point. That would require a lot of thought and a lot of planning, because it's a mixture of what's missing in today's marketplace and what artists are available who would be willing to fill those niches. And that would be, I don't know. I mean, we'd have to look. I can think of a few, actually, who I think are making recordings now and who are active in the different repertoire areas. French music, American music, the German standards, Italian opera, things like that. We could find them, we could put them together, and we could discover others. But that's the work of building a catalog. So it all has to be based on creating brand equity, a quality image, and that has to be based on maintaining a first-class, interesting catalog of recordings. And it has to be a mix, because the truth of the matter is that most people still want the standard repertoire. That's what sells. That's always what sells. And the unusual stuff, well, hardcore collectors like me will rave about it. Critics may rave about it. The public in general couldn't care less about it. So you've got to strike the balance, the right balance. And that's the trick. So as far as that aspect of running the label goes, well, that's critically important. Then comes how we get the public to pay attention. Well, one of the ways I would do that, and I really believe this strongly, when I was starting out as a critic, most of the record labels were pretty free with promotional material. I mean, nowadays they give you downloads, but if you have physical product, then it was all physical product. Some of them were very snooty about it. Some of them were very persnickety. Some of them wanted to know what you were going to say in advance before they'd give you a CD. The best person in the world for dealing with this issue was Klaus Heymann at Naxos, because his philosophy was, give them a CD if they're willing to talk about it. There is no amount of no way to measure the value of all of the free publicity you can get simply by giving people a disc. It's as easy as can be, and it's cheap. Yes, there's mailing and whatnot. I mean, there's a minor expense, and the whole package costs like 2 cents for the actual disc. But essentially, and even now, by the way, Naxos doesn't do it the way they used to. They used to just send everything, and now you have to pick what you want. But they're still very, very good about giving you recordings by Naxos and their distributed labels to the extent that they're available, that the distributed labels make them available to the distributor to distribute. Always fascinated me that classical labels had distributors who they would not permit to distribute. I mean, what on earth is the point? Now, there were some titles, granted, where the amount of free material given away exceeded the amount of copies they could reasonably be expected to sell. And if that were true, well, then they shouldn't have issued them in the first place. I mean, honestly, you have to have some sense of what your potential market is and how to access at least some of it. But the best way to publicize classical music was always give somebody who has access to the media a copy of the thing and encourage them to say something. And it doesn't matter if what they say is good, bad, or indifferent. There's no such thing as bad publicity. But you've got to get the word out. And you don't have a fortune to spend on advertising. You're not going to spend a pile of money doing that. Print media doesn't exist anymore. So you can't put ads in magazines the way we used to do it. When we began Classics Today, one of the things that we did in order to generate ad revenue was we had a newsletter. And if a recording got a top rating or a very good rating, a strong rating, then we would invite the label to purchase an ad in our monthly newsletter. And that monthly newsletter was distributed to all of the major chains, HMV and Tower Records. And we made displays. We went into the stores. We had a mailing list, and we sent out these newsletters. And the labels sent out the newsletters. It was a very simple way to get point of sale publicity for the product, because people could take the newsletter. It was a giveaway little leaflet, nicely printed, very artistic, if I do say so myself. It had extracts from the reviews, ratings, and it sold. It sold recordings. There are ways to do it. There are ways to directly market your product, and I would focus on those. Because even though money is no object and profitability is not an issue, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have to get the word out somehow. And of course, there are no record stores anymore, or very few record stores anymore, so you can't do that kind of point of sale. Now, point of sale is online. And whether it's online retailers like Presto Music or JPC in Germany or Amazon, or digital downloads and things like that. And you've got to find ways to make that word of mouth marketing count. And that means getting reviews. It just means getting reviews. People should never, ever be shy to give away product. That was Klaus's philosophy. And he was 100% right. That's what made Naxos. Because while other people were treating their CDs, which were worth about 2 cents each, as if they were made of gold, and they were doing you a massive favor by allowing you to write about their product. Naxos was asking anybody who would write about their product to do it and giving them the means to do it. And that made them a major force in the marketplace. So yes, there are ways to do it, ways to go about it. And in this market, well, that would have to be a major one, because it's all online now. It's all digital communications and social media and all of that stuff. I detest social media and I know nothing about it. So I would have to hire somebody who does know something about it. And they would work on commission, and I would give them a percentage of every nickel they brought in. That would be the best way to do it, I think. But anyway, so there are ways to get the word out. There are ways to build a catalog. You keep it in print forever. You keep churning it, not the way the major labels do. Like, you reissue and reissue and reissue. They issue a big box and then you cut it out and delete it. No, you keep it available over time, and let people talk about it. Let the interest build naturally in the classical music listening community. That's basically how I do it. I think that sort of covers the essentials. There are, of course, all the details. The devil is in the details, right? About which artist I pick and what they play and all that stuff. But I would like, ideally, to have a mix of established artists who maybe have been dropped from their major label, who are looking for things to do, but who have established names, and newcomers who are interesting and willing to take some risks, and any artist who's good, who has something proprietary. You gotta have something proprietary that nobody else has, or nobody else has the same way. There are lots of ways to be proprietary, but it's either the repertoire or the nature of the ensemble. That's how the period instrument movement got going. You find a hook that gives you an identity, and then you pray. That's the rest of it. You just clasp your hands, get down on your knees, and ask whatever deity or force of fate you believe in to bless you. Because without a little bit of luck, nothing's going to succeed. You need to have a little luck at the end of the day. So I hope that answers your question. I mean, those are the things I think about when it comes to record labels, and those are the things I criticize when I see labels that just don't seem to have a clue about how to do any of that. It's an interesting question, and I'm grateful for the fact that you asked it. So thank you. Keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.